Una producción original de Troop.
Hola, yo soy Carla Cardona y esto es Querida Valeria. Querida Valeria, estoy aprendiendo mucho y eso me emociona porque serán cosas que algún día nos sentaremos a platicar. ¿Por qué sentimos que estamos en una época difícil, de mucha enfermedad, de violencia, caos, vacío, depresión y prisas? A donde sea que pregunto, me topo con alguna versión de esta inquietud. Nos sentimos inseguros, con algún nivel de ansiedad, como que algo malo podría pasar y no estamos logrando encarnar ni habitar nuestra vida de una manera más en paz. ¿Cómo poder hacer esa transición a una vida más feliz y gozosa? ¿Estará realmente en nuestras manos? ¿O será que nuestro entorno está en contra de nuestros sueños y anhelos de una vida más bonita, tranquila y sana? Yo no sé realmente y me roba mucha energía pensar en todo lo que existe allá afuera que me está robando la posibilidad de vivir en plenitud, pero siento la responsabilidad de investigarlo por mí misma y de conocer a personas que me acerquen a esa versión de salud y de paz, porque en el fondo sí creo que exista un estilo de vida feliz y sano. Bienvenidos a un episodio más de Querida Valeria. Hoy está conmigo el Dr. Brad Jacobs, un líder reconocido en liderazgo consciente, cambio de comportamiento efectivo y medicina de precisión. El Dr. Jacobs es un médico formado en Stanford y fundador del Healing States Institute, una organización dedicada a la investigación y a la atención médica para veteranos y socorristas, utilizando terapias basadas en estados de conciencia sanadores, incluidas la medicina psicodélica, prácticas de respiración y terapia de surf. Hola, Jacob. Brad.
Hola.
Hola, Brad. ¿Cómo estás?
Estoy muy bien, estoy muy contento de estar aquí con usted. Gracias por la invitación.
No, y gracias a ti. De verdad aprecio mucho tu tiempo. El doctor Jacobs no vive aquí, entonces para mí es un honor que puedas estar aquí. Es algo que aprecio muchísimo. Para darles un poquito de contexto a las personas que pues, no te conocen, yo te conocí en el Congreso de Medicina de Estilo de Vida organizado por la doctora Elisa Sacal y su equipo. Y fue un momento increíble escuchar tu conferencia porque hablabas de unas cosas bien lindas, sobre todo de transformación personal. Y eso me tocó adentro de mí ciertas fibras que además de volarnos la cabeza con todo el conocimiento que ponías ahí, de la ciencia que hay detrás, de muchos temas que abarcaste, lo hacías de esta manera como muy humana, nunca perdiendo de vista que somos seres humanos y que no somos máquinas, que podemos hacer todo a la vez, que podemos tener vidas perfectas. No lo tenemos y no queremos tenerlas. Pero me encantó escucharte y eso, pues, por eso quería mucho que estuvieras aquí. Y bueno, vamos a hacer una transición. Vamos a hacerlo en inglés para poder fluir un poquito más. Si en algo no me explico, te lo voy a hacer en español.
Sí, claro.
Porque sé que entiendes también.
Sí.
Y bueno, first of all, before starting this conversation, I would like to know, like, if there was any defining moment in your life that maybe sparked the journey of your own personal transformation, like in a personal basis.
Yeah. For me, it's really been since my childhood, honestly. You know, I grew up, I was fortunate, I had a friend who did martial arts. They were 8 years old. And so I went and tried martial arts with him. He quit maybe 6 months later, but I loved it. So I had done it my whole life.
Okay.
And that has been my, the place where I go back to. That practice gives me the grounding, gives me the sense of stability and clarity of mind. So that's been with me the whole time. And then I will say, you know, life-changing moments have happened. My father passed away. My father died when I was 27, he was 52. And that was a moment where I realized how important it is to really enjoy life because it's so temporary.
Yes.
And how important it is to not take things for granted, which maybe we'll talk about. And that was one of the major shifts for me. And becoming a father.
For everybody, I think.
Big transition once you're a father.
Yeah, it's really challenging.
Yeah.
And why martial arts? What's in there? Is it something like spiritual or a way to convey like your emotions or something?
Yeah, on one hand, it's a personal practice. So you really drop into yourself, and maybe we'll talk about this more, but I forget about what's going on in my life. I just focus on the practice with someone or by myself practicing.
Okay.
And that brings me into the present moment, really relaxes me and gives me focus. It's such discipline.
Yes.
You know, like every day, and you're always learning, and it keeps you humble, and at the same time gives you confidence. So growing up, I learned lots of confidence. I felt really comfortable, like, you know, confident in myself physically.
Yeah.
But also the teachers keep you very humble.
Why humble?
So that you don't walk around with a big ego and you
Yes.
think you can beat everyone up and you act aggressively. It's much more like the goal is to actually avoid the fight. If you're really good, you actually avoid confrontation.
Okay.
Which is so true in life, right?
Yes.
So how do you take a situation and change it so that you avoid confrontation?
Yeah.
You reduce the anger. And there's so much of that in the world today.
And how did, if you don't mind me asking, how did your father's death or passing made a change in you? What happened inside of you?
Yeah, it was a lot of different things. I mean, I was 27 when he passed. He was 52. He was healthy till he was 50 years old. And all of a sudden he had a brain tumor. So healthy guy, no medications, rarely saw doctors. Didn't really like doctors.
Wow. And you're a doctor.
I'm the first doctor in the family.
Okay.
Medical
Wow.
doctor in the family.
Interesting.
And so on one hand, I was in medical school at the time when he was diagnosed. And so I thought, you know, we can save my father. Like, I'm a medical student. We'll figure this out.
Yeah.
And I was also interested in alternative medicine, Chinese medicine. Had some friends studying Chinese medicine, and I had done martial arts, Chinese martial arts. So I was very passionate about that too. And realizing, on one hand, both of them had beautiful things about them: conventional medicine, the neurosurgeon, you know, and acupuncture and herbal medicine, and they also had their limitations. So that was humbling to realize. And then when he passed, it just really taught me how short life really is, and that you never know when your day is here. So it really forced me to look at, what do I want to do now? It really set my priority away from trying to make money and trying to, you know, do all these things that are materialistic, and focus on, okay, if the end of my day is next week or a year from now or 5 years from now, what do I want to have looked back on and feel good about? It really shifted. I will say one more thing, which is, so many of my friends, their parents, you know, they're still alive, you know, in their 80s and 90s. And so their perspective is very different. When we get into these discussions, they're like, you're going to live till you're 80. And I'm like, who says? Really?
Yes.
So it's been interesting. So for me, what I have found really helpful for myself, for my patients, as a practicing physician, you know, watching my patients and trying to help them create a path towards more balance, is at what I call the bookends of the day, you know, antes de dormir, and like right when you wake up, before bed, and right when you wake up, to do personal reflect time. So that means you forget about the future and the past. You forget about who owes you money. You forget about who you owe money to.
Yeah.
You forget what's in the news, and you just focus on yourself. And that could be reading. It could be writing to your journal. It could be meditation. It could be taking a nice bath with some candles, and just really having quality time to yourself. So that's one. And the other is a gratitude practice. I'm really a big fan. There's so little space for gratitude.
Yes, there is.
So prayer, if you're religious, gratitude, just to notice what you're grateful for, to maybe even keep a journal where you write down one thing a day you're grateful for.
Yeah.
And I often did that when my kids were younger.
Yes.
We would do that. They didn't like it, of course, you know.
No,
they were
don't.
like, "Oh, Dad, here he goes again." But
Yes, that's true.
Right?
Yes.
But at the dinner table, we'd often be, "Okay, let's go around. What are we grateful for today?"
Not only in Thanksgiving Day.
Not only on Thanksgiving Day.
Yeah. And what if we feel there's nothing to be grateful for? That's a big challenge for people.
I think it's the most basic things that we can be grateful for, like literally the fact that I'm alive. I mean, for me, like I said,
starting there.
I'm 60 years old, so my dad died 8 years younger than me. Every day that I'm alive, I'm grateful for, because I could have been dead 8 years ago, like my father, right? So I think literally I'm alive. My body is healthy or relatively healthy, whatever parts are healthy. I had a beautiful
whatever
smile
parts
today.
are healthy. I like that.
Yeah,
Okay.
and
Even
just-
if I'm sick.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. For example, I've suffered with chronic back issues for 30 years. And
Okay.
I've lost muscle in my leg from nerve damage, and I was in chronic pain for years. And now, in that time, it was really, I could either fall into the darkness of all the pain, and that can consume me, or I can learn to look at not the shadow, but look at where's the light. And for me, there's lots of shadow. We all have our own personal shadow. The violence that's around us, the violence we do within ourselves and our own thinking, how we speak to ourselves. So to take a moment and notice, well, what is positive? What is beautiful? Whether it's a bird that flew by that you got to witness, a butterfly that showed up, a blade of grass.
Being aware, maybe. Maybe being aware, of our outside.
Yeah.
Okay.
Learning you and I can look in the same room and see very different things in the room.
That's right. Yes.
You may see the sort of beautiful piece of artwork, and maybe I'm looking at the dirt in the corner and I'm upset there's dirt on the floor, right?
Wow,
We're looking
that's a
at the
great
same
example.
room.
Yes. Okay.
It's sort of, there's a choice there, I feel like, where we can choose what to focus on.
And what do you think about personal connections? I think there have been so many people talking about them lately, the importance of it, in our health especially, like to connect really. But I don't know, maybe if you live alone, that's maybe harder. But if you have a spouse or kids, I think we have to do this effort to connect, maybe at dinner, maybe before sleeping, something that really connects us to, right?
Yeah.
Is this right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Loneliness is an epidemic, right?
Yes.
Like we're more connected through the internet, through social media, and more lonely than we've ever been.
That's right.
And actually, we're in the process of writing a book around how to age well through social longevity. So social longevity. So the fact that we can age much longer, we can age well, we can live a lot longer if we actually are more connected. And there's lots of science on this. Matter of fact, we're 3 times more likely to lose our memory if we feel isolated and alone, dementia risk. Which is as bad as there's a particular gene for dementia called the ApoE4 allele gene. It's like the worst gene. If people have it, they're devastated. And that increases your risk by 300% of dementia.
300%?
300%.
Oh
But being alone and feeling isolated increases your risk by 350%. So many people that are sophisticated are worried about their genetics, but just feeling connection is, to your point, so much more powerful, So for me, I say to people, okay, if something major happened in your life, who are the 4 people you would reach out to in your life, and write their names down.
4?
Yeah. Can you come up with 4 people in your life that you could say something positive or negative major?
Okay.
And write those names down. And then the second question is, when's the last time you talked to them? Right?
Yes.
And so to find a way to talk to those people, not just for the big events, but maybe once a week, to find a way to write an email or send a text or have a phone call, even better. And I think even just call to say, I love you.
Yes.
How are you?
That's right. You have a personal protocol, is this right? Like for personal transformation. Like, I don't know if it has like any steps on it. Like if anybody wants to or feels ready to change in some way or aren't happy with their lives in this moment, that want to do a change at some level, you do have this step or protocol. Could you share it with us?
Sure. Yeah, I have different protocols.
Different protocols?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I mean, there's one that we've created called the 6 Pillars of Healthy Living, and that's a bit of like a self-assessment. So it looks at, I call it, it's common sense, but not common practice.
Oh, that's right.
Which we can all relate to.
Yes, that's right.
How much are you moving? your body,
Okay.
and it's we call it exercise, but just how much do you move? How much do you get up and walk? And and the other part is how long do you just stay seated, right? So like most of us, we're now sitting in seats all day long, and that's as bad as tobacco smoking for a risk of heart disease, for a risk
Really?
of,
Oh my God, I
So-
didn't know that.
Yeah. So
Is that harmful?
it's that harmful
Oh
that
my
we sit
God.
all day. So I
Okay.
tell people once an hour, get up and just move.
Yeah.
For 5 minutes, go walk around. Have a conversation with someone, or don't. But just get up and move your body. So movement. The second is what we eat, and how we eat, our relationship with food.
So it's not only what we eat, it's how we eat
how
it?
we eat. So how often are we working and putting food in our mouth at the same time? Like we're not aware of the food we're putting. We're just eating while we're doing some other task.
Okay.
Right? I don't know how often that happens for you, but you're at a
Yeah.
computer, or you're on the phone, or you're driving.
You know what I
or-
do? I'm very obsessive about food. If it's the right food for me, I stopped the calorie thing a long time ago because it didn't work. I'm mostly into nutrients right now.
Yeah.
But like, is this good? Is this how was it cooked? And I don't think I get to enjoy like this sitting down and being, because we humans, I think, food is not only about eating, it's about sharing. It's about loving. It's also like a love language.
Yeah.
It's the time we sit with our loved ones, or maybe with us. If we're at work, maybe it's us alone. But it's that special moment. And sometimes when I'm aware, I can just let go and enjoy. But most of the time, it's like unconscious. It's like, oh my God, this has too many things. No, I'm not going to eat this. Or maybe this. Oh, no vegetables. Oh, I'm not eating any. I'm like so self-critic about what I'm eating. And that takes away the joy of eating and the benefits of not only what I'm eating, the nutrients, but the moment.
That's right. And like you said, I think food is a beautiful way for connection.
Yes.
Connection with one another, like we were talking about before. And if you're eating alone, even to, maybe even have a brief phone call or connection with yourself.
Yeah.
And noticing what's showing up, like you're saying, all the things that I didn't get enough vegetables. And I don't know how it is in Mexico. I know in the United States, people are eating without their mind is somewhere else. So they're driving literally and eating.
Oh my God.
Or they're like on the bus, eating, or they're sitting at their computer working and eating. And so their mind and their body are split. So that relationship's so important,
Okay.
So sleep and then is the third, and then stress and resilience is the fourth, connection, the fifth. And the last one is finding passion, some meaning and passion in your life. So I sort of ask people, can you do an assessment, 1 to 10? I have a more detailed assessment, but on 1 to 10, do you feel like you're getting a lot of movement? And how's your food? How's your sleep? And then the ones you score the least well in, the ones you don't score that well in, and you're excited about trying to do better in,
Yes.
then let's focus on that one thing. So a lot of people never exercised in high school and don't like exercise, and of course they don't score well on their.
Yeah.
But don't go try and exercise, because you're just going to fail, and then you're going to get mad at yourself, and then you're going to be upset with yourself, and then you become a critic, and then it makes things worse.
Okay.
So I encourage people, do the one that maybe isn't so as bad as exercise, but you're excited about. Maybe it's sleep, maybe it's stress. And once you focus on that, you'll find, let's say it's sleep. Now you have maybe more energy to walk a little bit more.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's those 6 sort of different pillars, I call them, to do a nice assessment. And then within that, you can focus.
Is there any one of these pillars that is more important than every other one?
As the decades have moved on, they've changed for me.
Okay.
And the data, I think, changes. And I think for everyone, it's a little different. I think for some people, if they exercise, everything changes for them. Like all of a sudden they eat differently because they feel their body and they remember their body.
Yes.
And so they want to eat a little different.
Okay.
And they know they have to get up in the morning to exercise, so they go to sleep earlier, right? And then the exercise relieves their stress.
Oh,
and then
that's
while they're
right.
exercising,
That's right.
they get perspective. And then
Okay.
for other people, once they have sleep better,
They can
then they have
exercise.
energy for exercise. So I feel like the portal in is individualized, but I will say from like a population perspective and what the science shows, connection.
Wow.
Back to what you said.
Yes.
You know, and this feeling of isolation and connection and finding ways to connect. And when I tell people there's family, although sometimes that's complicated, there's friends.
Yes.
And if people don't have a lot of either, I tell them, what do you like to do? And find groups of people that like to do that,
Yeah.
you know? And that's a nice way to come together.
Okay. So in this protocol, you involve these 6 pillars.
Yeah.
Do you have like any other one that's like that involves, because you were mentioning in this conference about peak performance,
Yeah.
peak experiences,
Right.
and some other factors. Do you have like a protocol that involves like peak experiences?
Yeah. So what I tend to have people do is, so once they figure out what it is they want to focus on, then
Yeah.
I gave them a sheet, and all this is actually on the website. If they wanted to download it for free, they're
Okay.
welcome to.
Okay.
Or I can send it to you, and you can,
Yeah,
whatever's
I will.
best. Yeah.
Thanks.
Where they can focus on a worksheet and sort of develop a plan for themselves around, okay, I'm going to focus on sleeping.
Okay.
So I'm going to go to sleep at 10. So I'm going to take the phone out of my bedroom, and I'm going to buy a clock. That's the first step. Buy a regular clock, not my
Yes.
phone. Things like that. And then once they are now in that plan for a protocol, I think peak experiences is one way to do it. But in general, I tell people, you know, the protocol is to find personal time. That we talked
Define
about.
personal time.
To find
To
personal,
find.
yeah.
Okay, okay.
So find both when you wake up and
Yes.
before you go to sleep, 10 minutes.
Personal time. Okay.
Personal time where you don't, you know, you're not reading the news, you're not looking at the text messages, you're not on social media. You're simply with yourself. And you are taking a bath,
Yeah.
you know? You're reading a book, maybe, or
Yes.
you're journaling, or you're just letting your mind drift. It just to create space within ourselves that doesn't have all these external stimuli
Yes.
coming in.
Okay.
And same in the morning. And when you do that on the bookends of the day, so the evening before you go to bed and in the morning, you'll start to bring the dreams and your sleep time. They start to get incorporated. So you'll start in the morning to some of the insights, you know, while we sleep, our brain reboots, you know.
Okay.
Our immune system reboots. We have human growth hormone that gets released, which is a huge hormone that affects multiple pathways and resets our brain, allows for our immune system to reboot, allows for new ideas to solidify, new connections in our brain to happen, right? So you start to then bring in those insights that are coming from within you, not from the outside in, but from within you. They start to emerge.
Okay.
Like an artist who's, you know, I forget which famous artist said, you know, I take a blank marble and I sort of release the human from within it by just chipping away and revealing its true being from
Wow.
within, right?
Yes.
It's the same thing within us. Like we're just this block, and we just need to sort of wash off the
yeah.
debris and the dirt and show our beauty. And a beautiful way is simply nighttime and daytime before and after sleep,
Okay.
to have some personal time. So that's one. And then the second is really around food and trying to get enough vegetables in your day.
Okay.
So you talked about vegetables, which is
They're
sometimes
so
hard to do.
for me. Yeah, it's so hard for me.
Yeah, is
Okay.
to try and get, and I tell people a little bit in every meal. If you can do it in the morning,
Yeah.
three meals a day, that's ideal. If you shoot for 3 and you get 2,
Yes.
that's okay, you know.
Okay.
And that's number 2.
Is that, sorry to interrupt,
Yeah.
vegetables are only green stuff? Because maybe it makes it easier for me, like eat your greens. And I'm like, what are you going to add in this meal that's green? Is that like accurate or no? No.
Yeah, I mean, vegetables can be the myriad of colors, and actually the more colors, the better, right? Purple and red and orange and yellow and green. So the myriad, all those vegetables.
Okay.
And fruit, you know, people tend to eat fruit.
Yes.
Because it's eat your fruits and vegetables.
Yeah.
If you can, I recommend a little less fruit, more
Okay.
like 1 piece of fruit a day, or berries ideally are great because they have less sugar in them.
Okay.
Rather than having a fruit juice, which people think are healthy, that's like a soda. There's as much sugar in fruit juice as there is just about in a soda. So you're much better off eating
the fruit.
The fruit itself because it has fiber.
Okay.
And so it slows it down. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's around if you can have some personal time. That's the connection piece. You're connecting with yourself.
Yes.
Yeah. And then connecting with others, we talked about. And then moving the body 15 minutes a day, I tell people. So if you can move 15 minutes, you don't have to do 1 hour a day, the recommendations, 45 minutes, an hour a day, no one can find time.
Yeah.
Literally 15 minutes a day.
Okay.
So if you can move 15 minutes a day, if you can get 5 to 7 servings of vegetables a day, which is about, a serving is basically this much.
You have to get 5 of those?
Yeah, so if you can get 5.
Oh my God.
So here's the good news. What I tell people is, it doesn't, so if you eat, people that eat 7 servings or more vegetables a day or have 42% reduction in mortality. So they live a lot longer. So over 40% reduction in mortality if you're eating 7 servings of vegetables a day. That's a lot. There's no medicine out there, not a single medicine that's as potent as that. Not a single one. And when they looked at the research of whether it's heart disease or cancer, within every single category, it helped. But the good news is, here's the good news, is that if you start at 1 serving a day and go to 2, you get benefit. Or if you go from 2 and you go to 3, you get benefit. Every step of so every additional serving, it's about a 6 to 8% benefit. If you end up at 7, you're at 42. Yeah. But literally, you start at, I don't eat any vegetables. Okay, I tell people, just eat 1 serving a day. Yeah. You've just improved yourself by 7%. So,
oh my God.
Which is great.
Yeah.
That's
I
the
was
good news.
in this wellness center about 4 months ago, and they only had vegetarian. And it was full. It was loaded of vegetables and like maybe beans and greens. And I was thinking, I think that if we ate that way, we could live like for 100 years.
Yeah.
It was like amazing.
Yeah. Our bowels feel better, right? You feel lighter.
But so much lighter. It was like maybe anti-inflammatory.
Yeah.
I felt like healthy. I felt mentally healthy. I felt less brain fog. It was like miraculous. And I couldn't believe it was only because I changed the food that I was eating. It was amazing.
And it's really
powerful.
It's really inexpensive. Like you can eat healthy and it doesn't cost a lot of money, right?
Okay.
Vegetables, right?
Vegetables.
Rice and beans, vegetables. It's simple foods that are quite healthy. We get all complicated with our baked goods, our croissants and our fancy foods in the bakery, and then we feel the sugar goes up, and then our sugar drops, and also a lot of people have problems with gluten now, and other food groups, and so you get brain fog or your joint swelling, joint pain, achiness, rashes, headaches, bloated. All those things could be from food, and people don't know, and they go see the doctor can't find anything, or they give them pain medication. But the truth is, it's so much of it relates to our food.
Oh my God, it's amazing. So it was personal time. It was food, connection, and what was the other one?
Movement.
And movement.
Yeah.
What's movement? I mean, one of the things that really drives me away from exercise is the time, is the effort. Yeah. I feel I have to be carrying and lifting weights like for an hour and a half, and I think I don't have time. It's so hard. Yeah. So I'm not going to move. So what would you advise people? What is movement? Maybe just walking, what is movement?
Yeah. So ideally, people do, I'll tell you what, my personal routine, maybe I'll start with that. So my bookends of the day, before I go to bed and when I get out of bed, I do 10 minutes of stretching. Okay. Yoga really is what I do. Okay. And it was the only thing that really relieved my back pain. I was telling you this chronic pain I had. And, I studied Chinese medicine. I've studied acupuncture. I went to medical school. Like, I tried to learn as much as I can. And while those all had some health benefit, yoga profoundly changed my pain in my back. And so for me, yoga. So as we get older, we start to get a little bit more rigid.
Yes.
And mentally and physically.
Yes, that's
and
right.
actually, the more limber we are physically, the more mental limberness we can have, and vice versa.
That's proportional, right?
Yes.
Wow.
So I recommend a bit of stretching in yoga. That's considered movement.
Did you do something before yoga? Like, did you lift weights or something like a little more intense? Or
Yeah.
that was your first approach to exercise?
Yeah, I used to swim. I was a competitive swimmer.
Oh.
So I was swimming and doing martial arts. So weights were usually in the backdrop. I actually do more weights now than I ever did, because as we get older, as you were saying, for better and worse, it is better to do weights. Even your own body weight is great.
Okay.
But back to your question about movement, I would say 15 minutes a day of movement. Okay. It could be walking, literally just simply walking. And there's a great study where they took people 70 years old and older, and they said, okay, and they randomized them. You guys do 45 minutes of walking a day. You guys do 15 minutes of walking 3 times a day.
Okay.
They had the same benefits.
Really?
Yeah. So if you find, we can all find 15 minutes a few times a day to walk, to do something. So I either park further away if I'm driving, or I get off at a bus stop a little bit further away from my destination, or there's so many ways to do this. Or I'm in a meeting and let's go for a walk and have a conversation. Okay. Let's look at the data on the computer, and then we go for a walk, and then we come back. You can just weave it into your life. Okay. So I recommend people do 15 minutes. It's sort of like vegetables. If you have 0 vegetables a day, going to 1 vegetable a serving a day has huge benefit. Okay. Same with movement. Okay. If not even more. Going from 0 to 15 minutes is huge. And then the studies have shown after 20 minutes, going from 20 to 45, there's some additional benefit. From 45 on, there really isn't that much additional benefit, other than some of the fitness parts. But for our health, the benefits actually start to diminish. So just 15 minutes a day. Okay. And if you're already doing 15 minutes a day, then sure, if you can move to 45. Ideally, it's walking. Ideally, it's we call zone 2 training, which zone 2 training is basically the level of exertion that allows you to burn body fat. Okay. So rather than using the glucose in our system, we'll use fat as fuel. Okay. And so that level of exertion is about, like, we can speak 2 or 3 sentences. We're a little bit sweaty. We can still have a bit of a conversation. That level of exertion is the ideal level. Okay.
But in heartbeats.
Yeah.
What's the, it's like...
So it depends on our age, but it's roughly 220 minus your age, and then you divide that by about 70% for people, for zone 2.
For zone 2.
Which a lot of people say, I don't feel anything. Like, I want to go exercise and feel it, which is fine. Yeah. But if they're looking to actually burn body fat and trim and get more endurance, then ideally it's 45 minutes. We're back to 45. Ideally, it's 30 to 45 minutes in zone 2 training 3 times a week. Okay. And then ideally 2 days a week of strength training. Okay. So that's the ideal routine. Yes. And a strength training could be as easy as push-ups and pull-ups, so your own body weight. It doesn't have to be weights per se. Okay. And doing lunges. There's lots of ways to do it on your own. So, yeah.
You're giving us hope, Brad.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
I think less is more, honestly.
Yes,
Part of the problem is we're supposed to do 15,000 things in order to be healthy. And what I tell people, including myself, is who has time for all that? So choose 2.
It's hard.
Can you just start with 2 things?
Yeah. And what I believe is you start building. You don't start there. You have to start here, but just a little bit. Every day. No. Yeah. What is a peak experience, and what are its benefits? What are they?
So peak experiences means having an experience that brings you into a flow state. People describe it as a flow state where you're in we're talking about time. Yes. Where time really has no bearing anymore. Have you ever had a moment, and maybe you guys in the audience can relate to a moment when time felt like it took forever, like almost like in a car accident or something, right? Where everything slowed down. Yes. Or it was a 3-hour event and it felt like it went by so quickly. And those are peak experiences where you're in this flow state where you're only in the present moment, you're fully absorbed in the present moment, you're experiencing everything in magnified time.
Okay.
And in that moment, everything shifts, and our brains shift. The waves in our brain, the brain waves change to a calmer, more awakened state where you can take more in.
Yes.
All the filters that we normally have, you know, that are filtering out the sound and the light and other distractions, all of a sudden they can be more open or they can be very removed depending on what's happening. So in that peak experience, there's nothing else that's going on other than what's right in front of you, and time goes away.
Does it have to be like a near-death experience? I'm thinking about an experience I had like a few years ago. We went into this little boat in deep open water in the ocean, searching for whales, the shark whales. Mm-hmm. It was so long, and I was so afraid of water, so afraid of the ocean. And I had my little baby and my daughter, and it was such a inside terrible experience for me. Once I dived into the water, everything went away. Like, I saw the shark and everything went away. It was like the most amazing experience of my life. Like seeing the shark coming towards me with its mouth.
Wow.
Like, it was worth it. I was suffering. I was crying. I wanted to go back. I was in a terrible state. But then everything went away. And then the returning to land was a little bit better. But once I touched the sand, I felt like a wave of joy I couldn't explain.
Yeah.
And I was actually thankful for that experience.
Yeah.
I was thankful for myself, like, for being so brave, because I thought I was being so brave. But I think I was fully present because, I don't know, because maybe the fear was involved. Maybe I wasn't present. That's why I was suffering so much, because I was caring for my kids. But is that a peak experience?
Yeah, that'd be a peak experience.
Yeah, okay.
For sure. And I love how you bring up what we talked about at the very beginning, gratitude. Like, all of a sudden you felt...
That's right.
Such gratitude for just being alive. Like, you made it.
Thank you, God.
Your baby was safe and healthy.
Yes.
And that is a peak experience, and where you had so much duress, so much challenges to get to that. It's like climbing the mountain.
Yes.
And then you reach the summit, right? There you are with the sharks there, and there's, oh my God, there's this bliss.
Right? Oh, that's right. Like,
and then
climbing a
back.
mountain. That's right. Okay.
It's like this efforting that happens. There's so much to be said about that. All the, where there's efforting that happens, where you feel uncomfortable and you feel out of sorts, and you don't, you lose your bearings.
So out of control. Yeah.
Your emotions are everywhere, and then you have this moment that you had where you were utterly present that made it all worthwhile.
Yes. It was.
And it doesn't have to be as complicated as that. We can get them in simpler form, but that is a beautiful
You don't have
example.
to feel like you're dying. That's
you don't
what
have
you
to
mean.
feel like you're dying.
Okay.
I would say yoga or meditation, or for me, martial arts, is a beautiful flow state in a way to have a peak experience. What I personally, this is not the general definition, is how I'm using peak experiences. It's a method to get us out of the prison of our mind.
I love that.
It's a method to release ourselves from the prison of our mind.
Oh, I love it. Thank you. Yeah.
Because it gives us perspective, right? So if you take a moment, that experience, or even if I'm doing, let's say, some stretching or some yoga or some breath work, or even the rosemary prayer, and you step away from all that stimuli that's happening. And sometimes what can happen is you're in the trees, and you're all these obstacles, you're seeing everything, and then you get lifted out, and you're on the mountaintop looking down at the forest now. And now you have perspective. It can give you perspective. But you have the peak experience, and on your way back to your life,
Yes.
you can have these insights. You see things from a different point of view, like the man who cut you off while you're driving and was honking, and all the stress you had, and you got so upset about it. I'm making this up as a story, but you can realize and say, that wasn't that big of a deal,
Yes.
it really gives you perspective. And that allows for what we call like more cognitive and psychological flexibility. So you go from the rigidity that we have, and you get perspective, you have a bigger view, and then all of a sudden you can say, oh, actually, these other things are possible too.
Yeah.
And you see other ways to live your life.
Yeah, I'm interested in the shutting part, like the prisoner of your mind. Why does this happen? Because you're in danger and you have to you're in survival mode. Does this take much of a stress? Do you have to stress yourself to feel that peak experience? What is happening inside of ourselves to be in that state?
Yeah, I think we live so we've lived so many years in all of our experiences. Then when you were a child, you had a positive experience, a negative experience, whatever the experience is. Let's say when I was young, I, was walking down the street and a black cat came across the street, and then 30 minutes later, something bad happened, right?
Yeah. Coincidence.
Right. And then now, the next time I see a black cat crossing the street, I'm going to be afraid something bad's going to happen. And so I see a black cat, and all of a sudden I'm living whatever happened in the past. I'm pretending it's happening now. I don't know this consciously, but unconsciously that's what's happening, right? Or the way a person disciplined me, let's say my father disciplined me as a child, and the way someone speaking to me reminds me of that unconsciously, I have that same reaction, right? Okay. So we find ourselves then a prisoner of our own mind because we're creating realities in the present moment that aren't happening, right? We think they're happening, but they're really not. And so the way someone looks at me, because it reminds me of something that happened before, and I think they feel a certain way because it reminds me of how someone else felt before, but I don't know that's how they feel. And so we get trapped in our own mind with these beliefs, and we get pretty rigid. And so the peak experiences free us up. You move into this moment, and like you said, you had all this emotion. You feel probably felt more space and a bigger version of yourself.
Yes.
A little more clear-headed,
Yeah.
And then you could look at something with a very fresh perspective, with new eyes, Okay. And that's the beauty of a peak experience.
I think there's a self-discovery thing in it, because I'm mostly, most of my life, I would describe myself as a super fearful person. And discovering a really brave person, it almost looked, I remember feeling very similar to when I had my babies, to the birth of my babies. It was so scary. It was so painful. I was so out of control. You can't control anything. You just have to trust your body, and that you're going to be alive, and that everything is going to be okay. Yeah. That, for me, that was the real present. Afterwards, after the peak experience, that I do believe there's a little fear in it, aside from stress, but that fear that you never know. You actually can die. It's not very probable, but your body thinks maybe you could die and drown and die. So the person I discovered lied within me was such a present. And that was the final, that outcome was so nice, because that story of the prisoner is conditioning my stories every day because of what you're explaining. It reminds me of so many stuff I lived time ago that keeps me a prisoner of my own self. And I can't go through stuff and create something else. Yeah. I'm mostly, we say in Mexico, me casé, I'm married to that version of myself. And suddenly this brave new girl appeared, and she could do it, and she could swim, and she could see the shark, even though, sharks are so scary, but I did it.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and I think that is something that's really valuable, really, really nice, that when you said it in this conference, that's maybe the thing that moved me. It's so powerful. You talked about surfing. That was a really good peak experience for you, right?
Yeah.
Because of that.
It's exactly the same thing. you have this fear, you know, you could get hurt, you could fall over the fall, you could drown, and you go anyway.
Yeah, it's cold, it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But
and then you get these moments, maybe even they're only seconds, of absolute pure awe, and you know, these, and all of a sudden, it's hard to put words to, but you feel this gratitude, this how blessed it is to be alive, and then I had the courage to do that. Actually, I do have some courage I can pull out of myself. And to your point, that you can change your story, your narratives.
Yes, your narrative.
I feel like that's an important thing for people to be mindful of too, is the stories we say out loud.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people say, ¿Cómo está? ¿Qué tal? Oh, muy estreso, right? Sí. Yeah, I'm so stressed. Maybe don't say that, you know, maybe hold that and give a different story. Say something else. Because it creates these loops in our brain that just keep repeating.
And if you get that peak experience, that physical peak experience, and translate that into your personal life, it's amazing. Yeah. You take those things you learned and then do that to have that uncomfortable conversation with your spouse.
Yes.
And be brave and be uncomfortable. Yes. And you not knowing the outcome of that conversation. Yeah. It takes the same physical thing, like conditions in your body, to do that and to say no to that awful boss of yours, or abuse, or especially abuse. Let's mention that, because it's so scary. It's scary.
That's right.
And being like trapped in there, and then you go like, oh, I can do this. I am going to tell. I am going to set limits. I'm going to do things differently because I'm made of other stuff. And other stuff is right there, like waiting to be used for the positive change. That's how I see it a little bit. Right?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I feel like you can. I think of it like they describe it as you're on the cushion or on the mat. You know, on the yoga mat or on the meditation cushion. It's an opportunity to experiment. It's your own little laboratory.
Oh, okay.
And then you can. It's safe there.
Okay.
And then you could take it off the mat, out of the experiment, and try it. That's a big one, what you said. Which, if a spouse that's abusive, that would be a big jump. But even the small ones, or your boss, and then because you've done it in a safe environment, now you know how to do it. Now you can bring it into yourself. This is part of who I am. I am courageous. I did it in this relatively safe place. Maybe the boat wasn't so safe for you, but
it was horrible.
Yeah, but it's a beautiful way to take that into your life. I agree.
Does inside our brains do we have like benefits, like the new neurological connections or something while we experience those peak experiences?
Yeah. So a lot of times what can happen is we then allow. When I was talking about like new to free your mind, so you have these relaxed beliefs. You know, all of a sudden things free up. And your brain makes connections to other parts of the brain that it doesn't normally talk to. And so then it's like talking to a new person that you didn't speak to before, and you learn new information from, and then now you create a new relationship. And the same thing happens in our brain. So one part of our brain is now talking to another part it doesn't normally talk to. They form a new relationship, and they connect. They hug each other, right? So now they have a connection, and that gives new insight. So we could talk about neuroplasticity.
I love it.
And as we get older, they say it's harder to make new connections, which is not true.
It's false.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so you can and do, and peak experiences are a beautiful way you get insight, and then the trick is, how do you bring it into your life? So what you said, like you had the courage and now to have the next conversation outside of that experience, that's hard, right? That's a big, so one tip I tell people is, write it down.
Okay.
I feel courageous today. I did it, whatever it is. Or speak into like your phone or something, which I prefer because I can hear my emotion. And I go back and listen to it. It might have been 5 years ago. I'll go back and listen, and by hearing it, and sometimes it's good to write, but by me hearing it, I relive it. And then I remember it again. I am courageous. I can be courageous.
Yeah.
I can go have that conversation.
So your past self can remind you of what you can do in the present time.
Especially when you're in that moment, right, where you're fully in that experience of how courageous I was, how courageous you were.
But then you forget.
You forget.
So that's a good tip.
Because the old stories come back.
Okay.
That's
Yeah,
the
that's
default, is the old stories. So it's a great way to pull in the new possibilities.
Okay. What is hormesis? Is that the way you pronounce it?
Hormesis, yeah.
What is that? I hear so much about it
Yeah,
nowadays.
so I would say the boat example you gave is an example of hormesis. So
Okay.
it's in we talk about chronic stress. We've been
Yes.
talking a lot about chronic stress. This is acute stress. And our bodies were designed for acute stress,
Okay.
not chronic stress.
Okay.
And so the chronic stress wears us down. But acute stress is actually a good thing. And a simple example is you're a kid, you get sick. You get a cold or you eat something bad and you get diarrhea and you get sick. And then your immune system actually gets built up from that. And so it's a positive thing. Or you have another, you're under a cold environment. One of the things I like to do, part of the protocols that you were talking about was cold plunges. So getting in cold water or cold shower if you don't have access to a cold bucket of water,
Okay.
or an ocean or something. And that's an acute stress that then creates the whole system has to come online. But then you stop it, and so then it now grows and learns from that experience. So it's been shown in lots of different, animal models and in lots of different conditions. That's really good for our system.
Okay.
And so many of us live our life very routine and very protected, and we like our warm shower, and we,
Really protective, that's right. And pleasure driven,
yeah.
right?
So hormesis is actually a way to actually bring in growth as we get older, which, we tend to grow less. Our brains grow less. Things break down over time. But doing hermetic practices, so maybe it's a cold plunge. Maybe it's you fast for 24 hours, right? There's lots of ways to do it, these experiences, and that's an opportunity for growth. So I recommend people find ways to have these hermetic experiences.
It's like little amounts of stress, but physical stress.
Yeah, it can be psychological. It can be emotional stress too. It can be, so there's lots of ways to do it. I typically, physical's easier,
Yeah.
so fasting or cold plunge. But
Because what we're saying, we're too much in our minds and less in our body. So that cold plunge, oh my goodness, you go back because you go back. I mean, it's inevitable. You have to be in your body, feel it. And we're so disconnected from our bodies.
Yeah.
And is cold plunges as good as like the sauna?
Yeah, so they're different. And cold plunge, there's lots of science around particularly the Finnish saunas. And there's all these infrared saunas out now that there's some data around too, where they typically spend 20 minutes in the sauna. And the cold plunge has different benefits, it seems like, because it's so jarring, and it only takes 1 to 3 minutes.
Yes.
But yeah, that can be really beneficial. They're both beneficial, and I think they're beneficial actually paired, so that you do a cold plunge and then sauna and do a couple circuits of that.
But why does it feel like the cold plunge, I've done it twice. It feels so dangerous for me because it's so painful. Sauna is uncomfortable because you're like, the heat, it's like uncomfortable, but it's not painful. But cold plunges are so painful. Why is that?
Yeah, so I recommend people, everyone's trying to get as cold as the water is cold.
Yeah.
Colder's better.
Yes.
I recommend actually start at a much warmer temperature.
Okay.
That's not warm per se, but it's cold, but not freezing.
Okay.
And then that's still a shock to the system. Okay. You don't want to deplete too much because some people, they actually deplete themselves too much and it's too big of a stress on the system. That's not good.
Oh.
And so and particularly, so the less body fat you have when you go in the cold plunge, the more likely you're going to really get cold and potentially hypothermic.
Yes. Okay.
Versus people that have they're large, lots of body fat around them, and they look at you like, "What's the problem?"
You're like freezing.
And because they have a big insulation in there, right?
That's unfair.
So that's totally unfair. So that's fine. So I recommend shorter periods of time and a warmer temperature.
Is it dangerous at any point? I saw this video of a man talking about the dangers. I don't know the science behind that. But like maybe a heart attack because it's so stressful that if somebody's not prepared, or like you have so many people giving these the courses on putting yourself in the ice, but without any like knowledge of your health condition. And for you it can be dangerous, but for the 90% of the people are here, it's good for them, but not for you. Are there any dangers?
The only danger really would be cardiovascular. So if you're someone that has heart disease, then it is a big shock to the system.
Okay.
And so people, in theory, could have a heart attack because it's a big stress. You know, it's like all of a sudden running a sprint. Like, right, it's probably what you felt like, right? You're in there and all of a sudden your heart rate jumps and everything's like, you know, it's a shock to the system. And so for people with known heart problems, that could be it. But otherwise, not really. The other thing is blood pressure. But again, particularly with saunas, if people are in there too long, they can pass out, right? Okay. Yeah. So it's those sort of extreme situations. But otherwise, it feels like it must be horrible for you, but it's really not. It's actually can be quite helpful.
Because you let time. The second time, because it was like so traumatic for me. Like the first time I did it, I was there for 3 minutes and it was like shocking, but I did it. But the second time, it was this really nice woman that guided me through the process, and it was less aggressive. I don't know. I dived my feet in there first, and then my legs, and then I started going slowly. It was about 8 minutes long, because it was like
progressive.
Yeah, it was progressive. And is that also good for you?
Yeah.
It is? It doesn't have to be like the complete submersion.
No.
Shocking. No.
Not
because
at all.
I felt bad, like, oh, well, I kind of cheated, you know.
No, and, you know, we have a culture of, you know, bigger is better and harder is better. And that's not true. Okay. No. And everyone, everyone has their own laboratory, their own body is their own laboratory. And you can look at your own HRV. Is a great way to look, actually. And sometimes these peak experiences, these hermetic experiences, can reduce your heart rate variability. But then the next night and the following couple of days, you'll see it go up. So that's expected, you know. So you put yourself under a bit of a stress. So the system is reacting. Your heart rate variability goes down. Maybe your resting heart rate goes up. And then you'll find the next couple days, all of a sudden, your heart rate variability is higher.
Yeah, okay.
And
because of that experience.
Because of that experience. It's been a positive experience for you.
So we've been mentioning so much the HRV. What is the HRV?
Yeah.
Everybody's talking about the HRV. What is it?
Yeah.
What does it tell us about us?
Our sense of, I would say our sense of ease, our sense of feeling expansive and relaxed. Not relaxed like necessarily in a I don't do anything sort of way, relaxed, lazy way, but more like expansive and abundant.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
And physiologically, what it is our heart rate, our heartbeat. So let's say our heartbeat is 60 beats a minute.
Yeah.
And if our heartbeat was every 1.00 seconds, exactly like a metronome, that would be very low. That would be very low heart rate variability, right? Okay. If it goes 0.9 seconds, the next beat happens in 1.1 seconds, the next one in 1.05 seconds, the next one 0.95 seconds, the next one in 1 second, and on average it's 60 beats. There's variability from each beat to each beat, right? That's a good thing. So it's sort of counterintuitive because we think, oh, no, isn't it bad if your heart rate's irregular? We call that atrial fibrillation or these other things. But no, it's assuming that's not what's happening. It's all coming from the right place. We call it the sinus node. So it's a sinus rhythm. Okay. But you have this variability. And that's good. And so why is that?
Yeah.
So we have a gas, simply put, we have the gas pedal and we have a brake. If our gas is only on, there's no brake, it's a very low heart rate variability. Okay. It's like the metronome. if we're using the brake and the gas, which I don't know if you ever drive behind anyone on the freeway who's doing that, it drives me crazy. But in this case, in our body, it's good. So it's the parasympathetic nervous system is the brake.
Yes.
Our sympathetic nervous system is the gas. And if our parasympathetic nervous system isn't working, isn't online, then all you have is the gas. So when you have a higher heart rate variability, it's because of the parasympathetic nervous system is working. And so how do you activate your parasympathetic nervous system more? Because we don't activate it as much as we used to back in the before the Industrial Revolution.
Yes.
When we were out in the forest and we were grazing and maybe we were hunting, but the hunt was happening, which was extreme and intense.
The peak experience.
The peak experience, but it was over.
Yes.
For a week, a month, 3 months. So how do you do that? So one trick is our breath. Okay. So our parasympathetic nervous system innervates our diaphragm. Okay. It's the vagus nerve, it's called. The vagus nerve comes down and innervates our diaphragm. When we use our breath, it turns on our parasympathetic nervous system. Okay. So the more stressed we are, the less we breathe. So as we learn to breathe and use our diaphragm, we can turn on our parasympathetic nervous, and our heart rate variability will go up, and that's a good thing.
Okay. So that's a trick we could use during the day.
Yeah.
Like,
when we sigh, like,
it's so liberating. Yeah.
It's turning on our parasympathetic nervous system.
I like to.
Because that big breath is like that long exhalation turns on our parasympathetic nervous system. So if you're feeling stressed, sigh. Tell people just to sigh and just long exhalations, just letting it go, and our heart rate variability goes up. Okay. And so that's associated with these feelings I was talking about. When it's low, it's been shown to all sorts of things. So more absenteeism at work, like people are sick more often. Yeah. If you're in the hospital, you're more likely to die in the setting of acute, like you're in the heart disease in the hospital. You're a bigger risk for dying if your heart rate variability is lower. All the way to like just common, places here, pain, etc. So it really correlates with a lot of things. And it's interesting these devices now can measure it.
Yeah, it's impressive.
Yeah.
And what factors affect it negatively?
Yeah.
I've heard about alcohol, of course, but everything is maybe the 6 pillars. If you're not taking care of one, maybe it does affect maybe sleep, hydration, food.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. So the things that create stress on the system in a chronic way. Okay. So poor sleep would be high stress, chronically high stress, affect it negatively. Being in difficult relationships, right? That will definitely affect your heart rate variability. It can be very stressful. And then, there's ways that it's affected negatively in the short-term way that we talked about already. That's a good thing because you're doing it by design, right? Yeah. Fasting or cold plunges. But the main ones I would say would be those, sort of really common sense. When people exercise, afterwards their heart rate variability goes up. Yeah. During exercise, it may go down.
Okay, yeah.
Because you're stressing yourself a little bit. But it depends. If you're doing yoga, heart rate variability goes up. When I come to Mexico City and I relax, my heart rate variability goes up versus being at home.
Yeah. Okay.
So I've done chanting. I've gone to these where people do Indian chanting, kirtan singing, and I've measured it. I went back looking at some data. My heart rate variability went up double. It's like, oh my God, I guess that's really good for me. I know I had a good evening. I didn't realize it was that good.
Okay, that's nice.
So things that when people go to prayer, when they go to church, their heart rate variability can go up, assuming it's a positive experience for you.
Yeah, of course. Wow, that's so interesting. That's super interesting. And why does alcohol affect it so much? If they've been telling us that maybe a glass of wine is good for us, why does it affect us so much?
Yeah, so it negatively affects heart rate variability. And we don't know exactly why, but it does for sure. It also affects sleep. People wake up a lot through the night.
Your body temperature goes up. That's one thing I learned.
Your heart rate goes up.
Yeah, exactly.
Throughout the night. For many people, their temperature can go up. Not everybody.
Not everybody? Oh, for me it does.
People's breath rates go up. And so it actually, as they're metabolizing the alcohol, the toxins of the alcohol itself, and will just disrupt our systems. And for unclear reasons, like I don't think they've mapped it out, but it dramatically will reduce your heart rate variability. I think it increases sympathetic tone, sympathetic activity, and reduces parasympathetic activity.
Okay.
So there's many better ways to calm yourself down than alcohol. Unfortunately, alcohol across the planet really has become a main way to escape and quote unquote relax.
And why is it? I remember you shared this like drug harm scale and I was impressed that alcohol was in the number one damage to yourself and others.
Yeah.
Otherwise, rather than maybe MDMA, the psilocybin. No, it was psilocybin.
Magic mushrooms. Hongas.
LSD, actually, they're like, for myself, they're like drugs. You can't try those. But then I see the scale, and I'm like, whoa, why the difference?
Yeah, so you're talking about the scale, I think his name's David Nutt, N-U-T-T. And so he looked at personal harm and societal harm for all these medicines or drugs.
Yes.
And he found the worst one of all of them was alcohol.
I can't believe that, Brad. That's
both individual and societal harm.
Yeah.
And if you think about, I mean, it makes sense, right? So all I can tell you, I worked in the emergency room for about 10 years. And every single shift, I would have 6 to 10 people come in for something related to alcohol. Whether they got in a car accident, they were throwing up from alcohol, they were bleeding because they're alcoholics and now their systems are all shutting down. Something.
Oh, my God.
6 to 10. And when it came to those other drugs you described, I never saw anybody. Marijuana is a problem now because they're making high potency marijuana, and so people come in more for that. Not as bad as alcohol at all, but still. So and then on the other side of the spectrum, and same with sleeping medication, by the way. So, or anxiety medications like benzodiazepines are pretty high up. The psychedelics, surprisingly aren't, right? But we were all taught that these are horrible.
Terrible, yes.
That you can become addicted, you can go crazy. And it turns out that those experiences are such big experiences that people don't want to do it too often. They do it with a lot of intention. They do it with some ceremony around it. And then they're like, okay, I'm good for a month or 3 years or 6 years. Whereas alcohol people drink on the regular. Yeah. And so for those reasons, we found that psychedelics, like you said, LSD and magic mushrooms, MDMA, are on the far, basically the safe side of the exact opposite side of alcohol.
So they're not harmful to your body. They don't kill your neurons as we've been taught.
That's right. They do not.
Really, Brad? Oh, it's hard for me to believe. So many years being taught this.
I know. You know, in the United States, the movement around actually had to do a lot to do with political reasons. So right then, the civil rights movement was very strong. And so that's one thing that was happening. In the anti-Vietnam protests were strong. Yeah. And so they took that opportunity, and a lot of those people that were doing the protesting and were sort of in this revolution mindset, where some of them were using psychedelics. And then you had the cocaine and crack cocaine epidemic, and the whole civil rights movement. So the politicians decided that they would create a narrative, a story, that these things are horrible for us, and these people are doing it, and these people are the problem. And they were able to then imprison black people, imprison the people that were taking the psychedelics, and create this whole narrative, and just say no to drugs. Okay. And so, but the psychedelics have been shown now in clinical research to be 3 times more effective than regular treatments for depression, for post-traumatic stress disorder. And they're showing more and more things. Anorexia, they're starting to look at now, eating disorders, body dysphoria, and many conditions, fibromyalgia,
trauma,
and trauma, post-traumatic stress and trauma. It's and part of it's what we described earlier. So this opportunity to change our narrative. Yeah, we have this peak experience. How we view the world can be seen differently. Yes. And you can reframe your story, and you come back having a different perspective and a different story. it's shocking, the effectiveness of these medicines.
Is this for everybody?
I wouldn't say it's for everybody. And so what I say around these peak experiences, psychedelics is one answer, but you could also go on a retreat for a week. Okay. You know, you can go do cold and hot plunges and, you know, create these protocols for yourself that allow you to maybe get to the same place through a different way.
Okay.
And psychedelic medicine isn't for everybody.
Okay.
A lot of people are using it for innovation and creativity also for the same reasons, like get you out of the
same way of thinking.
Yeah.
Okay. And who would you say is not for it? Because maybe if you, I think if you have any, like, in your home, psychosis, schizophrenia, or something like related, like a mental disorder.
That's right.
Maybe, is that like...
Yeah, they should not.
They
so
should
people,
not.
what we call with disordered thinking already, they have disordered thinking, this can put them at risk. So definitely not for people that have psychosis or schizophrenia. And it has to be even just looked at with people with a family history of that as well, even. And the thing about psychedelics, and one of the concerns I have, is it should be done within a context of a community, some accountability. It doesn't necessarily have to be in a medical model per se, but there needs to be some intentionality where there's some preparation for it. People spend 1 week to 4 weeks preparing. They clean up their diet, they get better sleep, they stop drinking alcohol. Some practices recommend no sex for a week prior. Then you have the experience, and then for a month after, similarly, have a clean diet, and ideally reconnecting with people like we were talking about earlier, and sharing conversation and to reinforce all the learnings you had. Otherwise, people go right back to their life how they used to be. So it really has to be done within a larger context.
Okay, and a safe space.
And a safe space, yeah.
Because you never know, like
That's
what's
right.
going to come out.
Yeah.
Because you're dealing with so many things inside.
Yeah, so you shouldn't do it by yourself.
Yeah, definitely.
Unless you're super experienced, and even then may not be a good idea. And you should be with people that are going to just hold space for you and not get in there and try and intervene, and just really create safety for you.
Okay.
It's how I recommend it. It's not for everyone. The research is burgeoning right now. We just had a conference recently that here in Mexico, the first scientific medicine conference. And at the last conference in the United States, there were 10,000 people, and from people from all over the world, researchers studying this. It's very different. I'll say one more thing about it is just it's a very different model for pharmaceutical drug companies. And they don't like the model because the model is you do it maybe 3 times. For example, the MDMA studies did 3 MDMA doses a month apart with psychological therapy in between. Yeah. And that's it. And then you're done. Wow. And then they looked at the results a year later, and 72% of the people no longer had post-traumatic stress disorder, no longer had the trauma. Whereas normally in the real world, it's more like 30%. Yeah. And that's after 10 years of therapy and medication every single day. Wow. So this is a completely different model. And it's bringing the healing capacity and potential back into ourselves. That we're our own sort of healing medicine within us.
Yeah, it looks like society's like searching for other options. Not like the ones they've imposed to us, right?
Yeah.
Brad, thank you so much. I know there's a lot of information. If you're ever back in Mexico, please come back.
I'd love to come back.
This was really valuable for many people because of what I said at last. Like, society is doing the job. We're looking for different options. We're looking for different ways of living because it's not working.
That's
We're
right.
sicker than ever. The global mental health crisis, it's out of control. So I'm glad you're here to give us more tools and, perspective of life. Thank you so much for re-empowering people, because that's what's missing. We often think it's going to come from the outside, and it's mostly from the inside, from your beliefs, from what you think you can and can't do. So thank you so much. I would like to ask you one last question. I'm going to ask this in Spanish. ¿Qué le dirías a tu Valeria? What would you say to Valeria? Valeria is whoever you you decide she is. Maybe it's yourself, maybe it's your mom. It doesn't have to be related to our conversation. It's just, what would you say to that really important person of your life?
Yeah. You know, first I would say there's a beautiful saying that says, perdón, lo siento, gracias, te amo. There's so much that we try to be good people, and sometimes we make mistakes. And I think it's important to show up and have the courage to admit our mistakes and to ask for apology and to give thanks and to share how much we love each other. And I feel like Valeria, struggles, and to know that there's love and connection there and forgiveness is so important. And we don't often communicate that and receive that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm tearing up now.
I would like to say I really appreciate your authenticity and your willingness to show up and tell your story and share your struggles, and it gives other people the confidence, that they can share their struggles and they're normal. They're not the, abnormal people. That's the only one that feels that way. And that's so important. So thank you for that work.
Thank you.
And I really appreciate you inviting me here today.
Thank you so much for those kind words.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the objectives of this project, to make people feel less alone in life, because it's hard. Sometimes being alive is hard and challenging. But I love what you said. There is love. There is connection. We have each other. We just forget. And we get winded up in so many things that are not good for ourselves. But thank you so much, and for the patience, because this is the first time I do anything in English. It was really challenging for me, but thank you for your patience and your love and your humanity. It's such an important thing for me. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Pues muchas gracias a todos los que llegaron hasta acá. Gracias por haberse quedado. Por apostarle también a querida Valeria, por abrirse a nuevas perspectivas, por abrir su corazón a algo diferente. Para mí es algo muy importante traer a personas que nos puedan guiar en este camino, porque para algunas personas será más valioso el camino espiritual, para otras el científico, para otros el mental, emocional. Para cada uno es diferente, y este es uno de los objetivos, incluso para mí, Valeria. Quiero que tenga esta gama de cosas sobre la mesa, de cuando no le encuentre respuestas a su vida espiritual, tal vez se venga un poquito más a lo médico, a lo científico, o si ella no le encontró por ahí, pues le va a buscar en otros lados. Y esto realmente no, creo que nunca estará de más mencionarles el tanto cariño que le pongo, lo que significa para mí. Es muchísimo y me da mucho gusto. Gracias. Me ayudan mucho cuando comparten, cuando le ponen una estrellita, cuando comparten en sus redes sociales. Si esto les gustó, por favor, compártanlo, o suscríbanse en el canal de YouTube o denle follow en Spotify. Esto de verdad que ayuda muchísimo al proyecto que siga creciendo y que llegue a muchísimos hogares y a personas que tal vez hoy no la están pasando tan bien. También ya es diciembre, sabemos que son épocas difíciles emocionalmente, retadoras, que no para todos es igual. Justo todo lo que venimos trabajando en el año de hábitos a veces se interrumpe. Entonces, que tengan estos espacios y esa hora y media en sus coches para reflexionar, para retomar, para estar con ustedes mismos. Y pues bueno, muchísimas gracias por haber llegado hasta acá. Les mando muchos besos y nos vemos la próxima.
Con Treso, café, té y buenas charlas, presentó
Querida Valeria.
Una producción original de Troop.